How's it going, everyone? Today we have a Stihl BR600 here, but that's not the point of this video. The point is, how do you properly set the gap for a Stihl 4-mix machine? What is a Stihl 4-mix machine? It's a 2-cycle machine. It runs on standard 2-cycle fuel. However, it has valves. It's supposed to be more efficient. It's supposed to have more power. I question that, to be honest, but that's what the book says. Now, the book also says you need a couple materials, which I'm going to call BS on. But I'm going to tell you what you actually need to do, what materials you need to get, and how to avoid paying Stihl's outrageous prices for their own proprietary tools. So, first things first, whether this be a weed eater, BR800, 600, whatever it is, you need to get to the valves, which I've already done. If you need a more in-depth video, I do have other videos specifically to either a 600, a weed eater, or a BR800. So I've already done that. I've already taken the cover off. The cover's right here. Now, the one thing I can say is, sometimes when you order a kit, it will come with like a cork little gasket, or sometimes a rubber one. These specific ones come with a rubber one. If you do insist on having a new one, you can, but to be honest, I don't really think it's necessary unless you rip it, or if it's super old. To be a little cautious here, we're gonna shove a little piece of cloth, it's clean, don't you worry, down the plug hole, just to prevent anything from getting down in there. Okay, next, what do you need to get? Either go to your local auto parts store or online and pick up a set of feeler gauges. That's what these are. They're thin pieces of metal that have special thicknesses, and that's it. So what we have here is I have a 4/1000 feeler gauge. So why do you need to do this routinely? One, if you ever pull on this and you get a really big kick, or it kind of rips the pull cord out of your hand, what will end up happening is, I don't know how well you can see it, but let's get you in here. Intake, exhaust. So make it easier for you to pull. You see that little bump right there? In fact, let's go backwards. That valve is down, and it goes up to the top of its travel, and look at this one. It barely touches the exhaust port. That is called a compression release. It makes it easier for you to turn it on. If you didn't turn it on, you'd be pulling against the full compression of this engine, and that could be a little hard. Now, if you have a wide gap, that's going to be a big problem because you're not actually going to be releasing any compression. The gap in between the rocker and the valve stem is going to be too wide, and it's not going to make contact, and then you'll get a kickback. Not the good type. So now what? So now we go to a point where one of the valves is down. At this moment in time, I'm going to stop. You probably read or heard on other places online, you need to go to something called TDC, or top dead center, to do this. You can. This is why I don't like that. Remember that compression release we just got done talking about? Unless you are completely perfect in your movement of the piston, you very well might be adjusting this with the compression release engaged. And if you do that, big problem. It won't work. So my way of doing it, in my opinion, is a lot better, a lot safer, a little more work, but a lot safer. Wait for one valve to be all the way down at its base of its travel, which right now is the exhaust valve, right there. You take your feeler gauge. Now this is the part that you're going to be able to, stick it to the Stihl man and not buy their crap tools. Buy other people's crap tools and modify it. You just take it, you cut a little thin sheet off. What's on the bottom of this rocker is like a little U, and we're putting the feeler gauge through the U. The U kind of makes it so a normal feeler gauge, because it's steel, won't fit in there. I'm 95% sure that's the only reason why they did it. They'll probably tell you so it doesn't move back and forth, but I doubt it. Just joking, it probably is for majority of that reason, but they also like the first one too. Next, we're going to shove it through the little U to the top of the valve. Now, If yours is super loose and you can't even feel any tension at all, then what you would do is take an 8mm or 5/16, doesn't really matter, and tighten or loosen it. Now, for reference, this one has enough, or if I were to let this go, it probably would slip out. I know it doesn't. That is almost perfect, depending on the weight of your feeler gauge, of course, but if it's too tight and you're literally bending it to shove it through that little gap, that's too tight. Too tight, you need to loosen it. Too loosen, you need to tighten it. Pretty straightforward. However, the thing that isn't straightforward is when you tighten the nut right here, if it's a little off, you can literally only have to turn it maybe a few degrees, 2-3 degrees, and it will be too tight. So be careful. Sometimes with other machines, you very well might have to go a little bit larger, because when you tighten it down, you might be causing the gap to change. This is a style that you don't have to worry about that, so it's fine. Once you're done with one side, whichever side you want to start with, it doesn't really matter, you go to the next one. And then you do the same thing. Same size, same everything. There's no differences here. And this one, I can tell instantly it's loose. So we shove it in there, take our driver, and we tighten. See how little of a turn I did, and it was too tight. And these can be a little tricky, so you kind of want to move it a few times, just kind of make sure that everything is good to go. But small changes. There we go. I think that is pretty good after I get it worked in. There we go. So it's a good idea to spin the motor over a few times, just so the valves can kind of seat themselves in. Well, not seat, but make sure the clearance is okay. That still seems dead on. That was a much more noticeable bump right there. Can you see that now? No, never mind. That was actually the valve going down. That's not the valve. The compression release, excuse me. So now we try this one again. And this one might actually be too tight. Yeah, that one's definitely too tight. So let's do this again. This is why we check it. That seems a lot better. Spin it over one more time, or maybe a few times. Doesn't hurt to do a few extras. We try it again. I'm not going to do the intake because the intake was fine both times. Yeah, that still is a hair too tight. There we go. Literally just that much. Like, I don't even know you can see how much I moved it. I mean, I could barely see how much I moved it. Oh yeah, that's a lot better now. Okay, so now we are done. We've officially timed the valves. This should be done when the motor's cold. If you've been using it all day, then you probably need to let it cool. But if it hasn't been ran, then go ahead and do this, and you should be good to go. So, like I said, this is good for any Stihl 4 mix. Go ahead and just do this. How often should you do it? You should do it, I do it at least once a year, depending on how much you use it. If you use it like just in the fall time, then it's probably okay to skip every other year. But if you use it routinely throughout the summer, or if you do it professionally, you should probably do this every few months. Yeah. So what we end up doing now is we'll go ahead, we'll put the valve cover back on, the screw back on. The washer that should be there is actually still attached to the bottom of the screw, so don't think it's missing. But there should be a washer there. And we should be set. Let's go ahead and put our plug back in, and however you had to gain access to your valves, if it's an 800, they make it a lot easier. They somehow decide to give us a bone there and make it so we can actually work on our machines. 600, yeah, you kind of have to disassemble. Weed eaters, a lot of them will also, they threw a bone at us, so that's good. But yeah, go ahead, give it a pull, and that's it. What does this fix? This fixes a non-start issue sometimes. If it's super tight or if it has low compression, it very well could be a valve clearance is way too tight. If it kicks back in your hand or makes a substantial rattle when you're running it, it could be loose, and that will cause issues as well. So those are the main issues. Non-starting or hard to start, or very low power. If it doesn't rev up, that's another thing. Very well could be loose or tight, probably tight, depending on what's going on there. Because what will end up happening is it very well could get warm, and then it will start to lose power. It might have just enough compression in this, with the speed of the piston going up and down to kind of let it still run, but you might hear popping, you might have a lot of issues. So check those valves. Hopefully this helped you out. If you like what you see, keep watching, subscribe, follow me on Instagram at SmallEngine101. If this helped you out, put a thumbs up because that helps me out a lot. If you have any questions, definitely leave a comment below. I'll be happy to help. And I'll see you in the next video. You have a good rest of your night.